We've talked a lot about theory. We've talked a lot about strategy. But now it is time to talk about what actually matters the most, what moves the needle the most when you're right, no matter what Leone says. It is player takes.
I'm feeling spicy. Let's go.
On today's show, we are going to examine players we have our biggest stands on, defined by our rankings versus best ball average draft position, where we are off the most from current market. We are going to refer to underdog average draft position today. Start with Drake London. This doesn't sound like a big one. We're only 4 spots different, Leone. Drake London, we have 11th overall. ADP is 15th overall. Now, I think people are going to say, yes, we know Atlanta is getting improved quarterback play. Yes, we know Atlanta's run pass ratio is going to be way different. This is going to be the best spot of Drake London's career. They're still, though, going to balk at a round 1 pick on Drake London, even if they feel those things. Leone, how do you feel about being ahead so high in the draft on Drake London?
Yeah, I feel pretty good about it. Obviously, it's tough taking a player in that portion of the draft who hasn't really shown it before. There's a tendency to rely on last year's statistics. And I think some of the criticism is you're making a huge projection if you have Drake London there. Well, that's sort of our job, is to make the projection and try and figure it out. And last year, Atlanta averaged 31.2 pass attempts per game. Our projections for season long have them closer to 36. So a 5 attempt per game increase. That's huge. When you look at the switch in quarterback play too, you're going to get less sacks. You're going to get more called pass plays. You're going to get, just a more efficient quarterback in Kirk Cousins. The quarterback play between Ritter, Heineke, and some of the in Mariota the last couple of years has been really bad for Atlanta. And despite that, both Pitts and London put up rookie seasons that in other spots would have had us absolutely swooning over them. And we did swoon over Kyle Pitts. It didn't go well because of Arthur Smith, but London in his rookie season earned a 28% target share, which is, that's massive for a rookie. He was 13th in the NFL in yards per route run out of 102 as a rookie. Kyle Pitts, exceeded 1,000 yards as a rookie. It's easy to forget how young he is. He's 23 years old still, going into year 4. He's younger than some of the, he's a year younger than Trey McBride. So I feel pretty good that you're getting 2 really talented players. And while the market has adjusted to the switching quarterback, switching coaching scheme, I don't think they've adjusted fully enough.
Right. And that's, to me, is the key. People are ready to capitulate on the Falcons and are excited about the Falcons, but maybe not enough. We are also ahead of market on Kyle Pitts by about 5 or 6 spots. If you want to feel something in your nether regions, you can start drafts, Drake London, Marvin Harrison Jr., if you have the 12th pick or something like that. And it's risky. We haven't seen it before in the NFL, really, from either of these guys. But man, that'll make it move. Okay. Let's go to a late round quarterback, Herzig. We are way ahead on Deshaun Watson. We have Deshaun Watson 139th overall. ADP is 164. People are going to say this guy has been one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL since he returned to action from a real life perspective. Herzig, what do you think about being so overweight on Deshaun Watson?
Yeah, I'll first throw it back. If you haven't yet listened to the Backdoor Stacks podcast we did that was released, I think, about a week ago, highly recommend listening to that. We specifically talked about the Browns there, and I mentioned that I think Deshaun Watson is one of the most off-priced kind of value players that we have. I'm convinced that last year's play was more of an effect of the injury than him just being now bad at football. But even if you disagree with how bad football he was last year, he still finished 3 of 5 games as a top 10 QB. You combine that with the Browns were 5th in neutral pace last year, 1st in overall play volume. They actually play faster with Deshaun Watson at the helm. Like, it really just comes down to whether or not you think, like, is there an injury or is there a benching risk with him? And given the contract they have, all the commitments with money, years to come, I think that benching is very minimal. I'm happy to take him as my number 2 QB in drafts. And I think this is a high floor with a decent ceiling play.
It is hard to find quarterbacks this late in this stage of fantasy who can run. And Deshaun Watson played 5 full games last year, did rush it 26 times. You just don't find that often in fantasy anymore where he goes ADP of 164. Deshaun Watson's been a primary target for me as well, like where we're at there. Let's go to the number 3 ADP discrepancy. We have Chris Godwin, 58 overall. ADP is 74. 4. So Chris Godwin's touchdown rate, Leone, was so bad the last couple years. He also got outside to the slot from the slot way too often last year. Under new regime, he is expected to shift back to a more slot-centric role. Still has Baker Mayfield at quarterback. This is a pretty big position, though, Leone. We're clear 16 spots ahead on Chris Godwin.
Yeah, I feel pretty good about this one. I mean, if you look historically where we've drafted Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, it's been much tighter. And a lot of years we're drafting Godwin ahead of Evans. I don't think Evans's huge season is the reason to have the gap that wide. And we like Evans too. It's just we really like Chris Godwin relative to ADP. And, he's cleared 1,000 yards 3 seasons in a row. He had kind of like an off year last year. But as you mentioned, the TD rate stuff, I think, is going to regress positively for him, and moving back in the slot should get him more catches. He got to the 1,000 yards, but on like 15 to 20 less catches than normal. We've got him back up to catching 95 to 100 balls this year, moving back in the slot. And just the way that offense evolved over the course of the season last year, Baker really got settled in. And I was surprised, under Bowles to see how willing they were to be positive pass rate over expectation, push the pace a little bit. In some of our advanced pace metrics we looked this offseason, Tampa Bay flashed a little bit more than I expected. So all in all, I just think it's a really safe choice there. And I do think there's legitimate upside.
Yeah, I think the concern for me, and I do like being ahead of market on Godwin, the concern for me is that I have a ton of respect for Dave Canales. I don't know a ton about Liam Cohen, who was Kentucky's offensive coordinator last year, did spend some time with the Rams in 2022, and maybe Chris Godwin just isn't a touchdown scorer. Now, one thing I will say, Herzig, is that we are also ahead of market on Mike Evans. Leone mentioned Mike Evans 18 overall, ADP is 24, and we're also ahead on Chris Godwin by 16 spots. So I think it's kind of a case of the market maybe sharing some concerns on Bucs offense as a whole. And the Mike Evans stuff, God, this guy has been the most dominant, incredible best ball player. I mean, and then he goes out and careers it at 30 years old with Baker Mayfield. So I don't know. How do you feeling about both Bucs guys, us being pretty far ahead on both, Herzig?
Yeah, I like them both. And I think it's one of those situations where the entire passing offense runs through these two guys. Like even Chris Godwin last year, he still had a 23% target share, still finished the year as kind of top 20 league in targets. And this is when he was playing second fiddle outside to Mike Evans. I do think the big news is going to be, and Chris Godwin, he said it himself. The coaches, they've said it. He's going to be playing a lot more in the slot this year. And when you draft Jalen McMillan, he's probably the one who's going to be competing for that more outside spot. That's probably more the win sprinter, just playing the role. Godwin, 2 touchdowns last year on those 1,000+ yards. I think we're going to see positive regression there. And I'm still happy to take Mike Evans too. I do think Mike Evans is in that weird part of the draft where you could probably flip-flop those 10 wide receivers that are all going in the kind of late second, early third. But yeah, I'm happy to draft both these. And I think it really is, people see the name. People aren't used to drafting them this high as we're looking at it now. But at the end of the day, the offense runs through these two guys. And we never even saw injuries last year to either. If one of those two were to get injured, you now have contingency upside that one of those could just have some huge games.
The Bucs have shown that they care about this Mike Evans 1,000-yard streak, like repeatedly. Mike Evans now has had 1,000 yards in every season of his career, 10 straight seasons, I believe that it is. And so he will be playing, if it's close, he will be playing in week 17, probably playing anyways, but a little bit extra security there on Mike Evans, even though he will be 31 in August. All right. Let's go to Aaron Jones. Now, Aaron Jones has long been one of our favorites from a fantasy perspective because he's so explosive as a runner and so good as a receiver. Now he goes to Minnesota with an ADP of 72. We're pretty far behind here at 89. Don't think I've gotten Aaron Jones once in a draft so far. I've probably done, 10 or 20. Herzig, what do you think about being so far behind on Aaron Jones?
Yeah, I think the market is just assuming that he's the clear number one there in Minnesota. But if you look at his snaps per game the last 3 years, it was 60%, 58%, 53%. It's going down, and I mean, not trending in the right direction. That wasn't that high to begin with. I think he's likely the 1A, but I'm not even confident that's the case. Like if you look at Ty Chandler in weeks 15 to 18 last year, he handled 73% of the rushes. He ran around on 32% of the dropbacks. You can read that as, they finished the season with him. They didn't like what they saw, so they're bringing in Aaron Jones. or you can see it as they at least have the confidence that he can play that role, he can handle that workload. And what I see it as, they bring Aaron Jones in. Aaron Jones showed he still has the juice last year. He's the dynamic player, but he's not an every down player. So I think we're going to see this as a bit of a 1A, 1B. Yeah, I think Aaron Jones probably is that 1A, but I'm not confident in that. And I think it's way too expensive for what we're our confidence and our ceiling in that situation.
So we are 5 spots ahead of market on Ty Chandler. When we get into like the 150s part of the draft, and so many of my teams are zero or hero running back, I've been taking Ty Chandler, Marshawn Lloyd, Kendry Miller, Rico Dowdle, Zach Charbonnet, Jerome Ford. Like those, Ty Chandler's been part of those targets for me. So I can already tell I'm going to have a pretty big position by the end of all this on Ty Chandler and against Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones' contract that he signed with the Vikings wasn't like spectacular. 1 year, $7 million, $4 million signing bonus. The $7 million is guaranteed. It's fine, but it's short. And I think that speaks to how many times he's been injured and been unable to stay on the field for the Packers for sure. I like that position we have too. All right, Leone, we have an old here.
Oh, man.
We have an old, and we have an old that is almost 30 spots ahead of ADP in Adam Thielen. We have Adam Thielen 137 overall. His ADP is 164. Now, Adam Thielen shoved it down my throat early last season. I mean, this guy in DFS, this guy was like, if you didn't play Adam Thielen in cash, you were like torching money. And that makes me sick to say, but that's what was going on last year. Different this year, bring in new coaching regime, Dave Canales, etc. Also add Xavier Legette. They're talking about running the crap out of the ball for whatever that's worth. Leone, I know you love your olds. Yeah. Thoughts on Thielen?
It doesn't feel great for sure, but I do think if we're zooming out, this guy's coming off 140 targets, 100 catches, 1,000 yards, and he's going the exact same spot last year when we thought, when we were taking unders on 600 receiving yards for the year. Mm-hmm. So the market has made no adjustment to what he did last year, and this is with the offense being about as anemic as it possibly could have been. Arguably that helped Thielen to get some of the shorter ADOT stuff, but with Canales here, hopefully the offense takes a little bit of a step forward. It's hard not to from where they're starting from. And I think Thielen's shown enough that he's probably going to earn targets. Now, from an actual strategy roster construction standpoint, if I've drafted a lot of receivers early, which we've talked about on other podcasts, I might skip over Thielen knowing he's like going to pay off this tag, but that I'm already set like in terms of safety at receiver. And I might take some shots on some guys we're a little bit lower on that have upside. But if I have a build where I've only taken 3 or 4 wide receivers or even 5 wide receivers for the first 10 rounds, and maybe I've taken some shots on like Keon Coleman or something earlier, then I do feel like that safety for Adam Thielen can be really useful on a best ball squad. So, that's why we're above market. I don't feel great about it, but our inputs, I think, are like as conservative as it possibly can be. And the market's basically just said, we don't want to draft this guy no matter what.
Right. So he's going to be 34. 34 Adam Thielen will be on August 22nd here. The market prefers Xavier Legette. And we can get into this whole thing about rookie wide receivers and what's going on Underdog. We'll get into that here a little bit later. But Legette's ADP is 138. Thielen's is 165. I get it. But man, that is too drastic, Herzig. Have you been handling Legette and Thielen in drafts?
But you also have Deontay Johnson, and Deontay Johnson is basically a younger version of Adam Thielen. Like what he's done well in this career is just get open. And so I think they brought him in to kind of know like, hey, we need to make it so that Bryce can throw to guys who are open, because it's very clear that Bryce can't throw guys open with his just lack of skill, at least at this point. I just don't see the upside. I always give credit to the entire like ETR projections team because, Leone's obviously the face, but there's a lot of work behind the scenes. But no, this one's just Leone. Leone, you can have Thielen. You can have him.
I don't think it's that bad, man. Especially like, on thinking about the type of wide receiver room you already have when you're considering Thielen, I think is important. Leone, any final thoughts on Legette, Thielen, or any Carolina stuff?
Just noting Legette was like a really shaky prospect, complete 1-year wonder.
Yeah.
So just want to put that out there.
All right. Let's go to this Eagles stuff, Leone, because we are way off across the board. Saquon Barkley has an ADP around 15, early second round. We have him 30th. Jalen Hurts, on the other hand, has an ADP around 36. We're way higher than that, 24th overall. And Devonta Smith is one that if you're using our rankings, you're going to get a ton of. I would caution people, to understand where he actually goes, Devonta Smith ADP 32, we have Devonta Smith at 17. So lower on Barkley, higher on Hurts, higher on Devonta, and we're also higher on Goddard for what it's worth, Leone, which I actually like too. But yeah, go ahead on all the Eagles stuff, Leone.
Yeah, definitely a tricky situation. In my mind, I think maybe the market's overreacting a little bit to the Eagles falling off towards the end of last season. I kind of expect them to be one of the better offenses in the league. And that's what we expect from a scoring perspective. They also run at a really fast pace. They bring in Kellen Moore, who did the same thing with the Chargers and with Dallas. So they're going to be up there in terms of plays per game. And I think the pass rate might be, below average, but not crazy below average, just a little bit. And that's going to be good for a team that has a pretty condensed target tree. It's AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, and Dallas Goedert. That's who it is. And if you look at the healthy games for Goddard, his target share is like really good for a tight end. And with Devontae Smith, 2 years ago, him and AJ Brown were pretty close in targets. Now, last year, AJ Brown took a step forward. We're kind of middling that in our projections, saying somewhere between the target shares the last 2 years is what we'd expect. And Devontae Smith's coming off a career best 9.5 yards per target. He's in the absolute peak of his career. I still think there's some upside on the table in terms of more big plays that we haven't seen from him yet. And that's not even really factored into our projection. So I feel pretty strongly about that. The quarterback versus running back situation, though, with Hurts versus Barkley, that's tough. Barkley, we've looked really close at, and it comes down to like he's got to really, really smash on efficiency, and he might be able to. But this is a guy that's made a lot of bank catching balls, goal line work before, and both of those things are a little bit more suspect with Philadelphia. And speaking of market overreactions, I do think that 2 years ago, elite quarterback crushed, and then Allen and Hurts and all those guys go really early last season. Elite quarterback kind of stunk, and now those guys are going later. And we're trying to just kind of project them as strong as possible and see some opportunity in some elite quarterback builds, especially, if you can get Hurts at the end of round 3.
Yeah, I think that's well said. And I agree on all that. Actually, I made a mistake. I wrote down we had Saquon Barkley at 30th. We actually have him 22nd overall, and his ADP is 15th. So not quite as drastic there on the Saquon fade. But yeah, catching passes and goal line stuff, the tush push, and Jalen Hurts not targeting running backs. Those are certainly concerns for Saquon. I think, Herzig, part of what's going on here with Devonta Smith and Jalen Hurts is the stacking stuff, because it shouldn't be that hard. And you can kind of get like the giga stack sometimes, AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, Jalen Hurts, and Goddard. But if you don't get AJ Brown, it can be hard to get Hurts because they kind of go in a pocket. Devonta and Hurts go in a pocket where you kind of can't get them both, right? So I've been handling Eagles stuff early in drafts.
Yeah, from like a pure strategy aspect, I do think that the Jalen Hurts and the AJ Brown ADPs do have an impact on the Devontae Smith, because it gets a little scary. It's like, okay, do I take Devontae Smith here, but I'm not going to, here meaning let's say mid-third, but that the AJ Brown drafter is going to go twice before you go again. So they're probably going to take Jalen Hurts. So you okay with a naked Devontae Smith? I personally am. I still think that's the level of talent and the kind of profile that, hey, you take him as a one-off and you stack somewhere else. But what I do want to kind of say is like, hey, right now in these drafts, you can get these Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown, Jalen Hurts, Devontae Smith, and sometimes even all three of them, stacks that are possible. Those may not be possible come July and August. And especially with, hey, we're ahead of rankings substantially on Devontae Smith. We're ahead of rankings on Jalen Hurts. It wouldn't be shocking if those both move up to kind of the late third. And now if you want to stack them, you actually have to draft one in the late second. I mean, like early third. You might have to draft one in the late second. That becomes quite costly, especially when other people are doing it so much later. So there's a benefit to drafting now and saying, hey, I'm fine with taking those stacks now, one, either the combos or all three, and just say, hey, if we don't get it later on, that's perfectly okay. I packed my bags early.
Yeah, I think that's an interesting way to think about it. I also think part of what's going on here with Devonta Smith is that tier of wide receiver is so flat. I don't think that like Devontae Adams, Deebo Samuel, Nico Collins, Mike Evans, Steph Diggs, DJ Moore, Jalen Waddle, Malik Neighbors, DK Metcalf, Michael Pittman, Devonta Smith. I'd be hard pressed to find people who can really make a great case. Like I can nitpick around those guys, and there's certain ones that I like, but I think that's pretty flat. But I'm surprised that the market has Devontae at the bottom of that tier, I guess is my point.
And just quickly on that point, we're obviously working really hard to be as precise in these projections as possible. But when you get a flat tier like that, if we move a guy 0.5% of target share, it's probably going to move him more than you think. So just understanding that, and that's part of the reason why Daigle has put out the tiers for the underdog drafting. So make sure to check that out.
Yeah, if you're drafting, we do have tiers, and we're updating the tiers for both Underdog and DraftKings on a regular basis. Be sure you're checking those out. All right. Let's go to the Chargers, guys. This is one that I've struggled with. Josh Palmer, we have 94th overall. ADP is 124. Ladd McConkey, we have 81st overall. ADP is 70. Now, casual people, once we get to August, like home league, may not realize what's going on in the shift of philosophy for the Chargers. They may not realize that we're projecting this team to be one of the more run-heavy teams in the league. I'm curious, though, Leone, if you think the current market, which is a sharper market, has overreacted. Like, oh my God, the Chargers are never going to throw the ball. The Chargers are never going to have any points through the air. I don't buy that, really. I think they want to run the ball, but man, their running backs are Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins and Vidal. Like, they could fail running the football also. So I don't know. It's tough on Chargers wide receivers right now. Again, we're way ahead on Palmer and a little bit behind on McConkey.
Yeah, it's also tough that they have like a pretty high season-long win total, which is somewhat surprising to me, and that factors obviously into our projected pass run rates. I do think that where people could be undervaluing the Chargers passing game is just from an efficiency perspective. If you look at some of Harbaugh's teams, they have been run heavy, but the quarterbacks have performed well from an efficiency standpoint. McConkey versus Palmer is a tough one. We might make some adjustments there. Right now, we have them pretty close on base target share. We've got McConkey with a higher ceiling potential, given the uncertainty of the rookie. And Josh Palmer, at this point, we kind of know who he is. And Palmer's like a better version of that Thielen pick, where I think like if you get into a point where like he's pretty safe for targets. You look at this wide receiver room as the incumbent, Quentin Johnston failing, some uncertainty with Ladd McConkey. Like Palmer's gonna get his targets. Probably not huge upside, but if you need a guy that's going to give you usable weeks at that point in the draft, I think he's really solid. With the rookies in general, you'll notice we're behind on a lot of these guys. The ADP on these guys has just really soared, when you compare it to the last few seasons, even comparing it to last season when I thought we had honestly better options in like Jordan Addison, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Zay Flowers. Those type of guys were going around where McConkey and Coleman, and these guys in McConkey and Coleman aren't as good of prospects and were drafted 10 to 15 spots later than those rookies the previous year. And none of those rookies paid off last year in this range of the draft either. So obviously we know systemically drafting rookies can be pretty profitable. I will definitely reach on one or two of them to kind of get the wide receiver room in total the way I want. But in a vacuum, I think, Ladd and some of the other rookie receivers in this range are overpriced.
Yeah. I'll say two things. First, it's out of control. Rookie hype on Underdog and wide receiver hype on Underdog is combining to send every rookie wide receiver like beyond the bounds of what's mathematically realistic. Like I feel like we're pretty high on a lot of these rookies, and we're still not as high as Underdog market is. On other sites, it's not as much like that. Second thing that I'd say, we didn't mention this in the backdoor stacks, Herzig, but like you can get Josh Palmer, Justin Herbert so easily, and they go pretty close to each other. Like you can just do that. If you need a stack real quick, boom, boom, Palmer, Herbert, and you could even, if you're feeling spicy, we don't like this based on our rank, but you could throw Quentin Johnston in for like pretty cheap later. Also, Herzig, any thoughts on how you've been handling Palmer and Ladd?
Yeah, I just think the two of them is the classic situation of how do you handle range of outcomes when projections might be kind of similar. Like their median outcome might be pretty similar. The thing is, we've 3 years of data on Josh Palmer. Yes, he had his best year last year, but like we know the chance of him finishing as like a top 10, top 15, even top 20 wide receiver is still very slim. With Ladd McConkey, we just have that wider range of outcomes where we don't know. And so, yes, his floor is probably a lot lower. It could be similar to a Quentin Johnston rookie year last year where he's just abysmal, or it could be that we are undervaluing him and he's actually a complete stud. And so I think that's where the market's saying, hey, I'm okay with taking that risk when I want at least the upside that maybe he can, hit that top 10, top 15 wide receiver season. And so that's where the market is definitely favoring him. I agree, though. The market favoring him by what, 4 rounds or so?
50 spots. Yeah.
Yeah, that's too much.
Yeah. All right, Herzig, let's go to the Seahawks stuff. So maybe you can leave another old Tyler Lockett for Leone if you want. Tyler Lockett, we have 86. ADP is 107. Kenneth Walker is an interesting one, though. We have him 52 on Underdog. 62 is the ADP. Now, in a lot of these, in Underdog, I'm more likely to try to get a running back room going earlier. On DraftKings, it gets them on the clock, and Kenneth Walker is, I'm just like, whatever, I'll figure it out running back later. On Underdog, though, I start to feel more pressure to get a running back room together, and Kenneth Walker's been a target for me there, just as close my eyes and bet on an explosive guy who I know can score 3 touchdowns in a game. And I'm just thinking about touchdowns so much on Underdog. Now, again, we are 10 spots ahead on Walker, 20 spots ahead on Lockett. Herzig, Seahawks thoughts?
Yeah, I've ended up with a little Walker, but overall, from a personal standpoint, I didn't think we need to acknowledge that there was a ton of risk in the way that Walker kind of plays, and we have a brand new coaching staff that are not the ones who drafted Kenneth Walker. And so the knock on Kenneth Walker has been that he's got like low success rate, that he's not the guy who's going to be giving you those 2-yard, 3-yard plays. He's the one that's trying to go for the home run or give you the negative yards. And they do have Charbonnet behind there. That is a very competent, very quality back. And so I think there is some risk that needs to be baked in for, hey, is this the guy? And he's going to continue to be the guy throughout the season, because with that new coaching staff, that's just a new variable that's kind of unknown. But I do get it from like a structure wise. Kenneth Walker, that's where you probably started off already, have maybe 3, even 4 really strong wide receivers. You don't want to get too far behind on running back. So I get the desire to take him. And that is why I take him too, because, in games that Seahawks are winning, he has the ability to really have those high ceiling outcomes because of his explosiveness, because he is the goal line back there. At least that's the expectation. But I personally, and as you mentioned, it's the Ty Chandler, the Charbonnet. I like a lot of those guys. So I'm not one to say like, hey, we should be drafting him 10 ahead of ADP as our rankings. But I have that caution in my head.
Yeah. Leone, I'll give you a chance to talk about Tyler Lockett here, 20 spots ahead of ADP on Tyler Lockett. We're also 9 spots ahead on Jackson Smith-Njigba, and we're a little bit ahead, like 4 spots on DK Metcalf. So just pretty far ahead on Seahawks pass game as a whole here, but particularly Lockett.
Yeah, with Lockett, it's the same thing every year. I think the market just undervalues what he gives you. I will say I think the risk this year is a bit more heightened. We did see a drop off in some efficiency metrics for him last season, and he's obviously going to turn 32 in September. So we might ding the efficiency some, which will still leave us ahead of ADP, but not as much. I have drafted him pretty frequently, though, thus far. I think he's a really solid wide receiver, and this is an offense that, I talked about Tampa Bay being like somewhat surprising to me in terms of like the way they've, executed. I would say the same thing for Seattle. Obviously, you're going to get a change in coaching staff here, but they have been, in terms of pass rate over expectation, positive the last couple of seasons, which I wouldn't have expected. And, I think there's just too many talented skill players for the offense to really fail between, Walker's explosiveness, Lockett being a solid receiver. We know what Metcalf gives us, and hopefully Jackson Smith-Njigba takes a little bit of a step forward.
There's one thing I do want to reference in the Seahawks that I think is important, is I think there's some sneaky Geno benching risk at the end of the season.
I have not taken Geno, I think, at all, because I'm so petrified of taking zeros late in the year. So yeah, I think that's definitely a good point. On the JSN versus Lockett thing, I agree JSN should be ahead, and we do have JSN ahead decently. But the current market is 26 spots clear. JSN is 26 spots clear of Lockett. That seems too wide to me. All right. Jacksonville. So this is another one where I've been getting a lot of this with our rankings, and I like it. I like Christian Kirk, especially on DraftKings. We are 11 spots ahead of him on Underdog. Trevor Lawrence, we are 20 plus spots ahead at 93 overall. And Gabe Davis, 111 overall. ADP is 132. People want nothing to do with Gabe Davis here. Leone, any thoughts on being higher than market on Jacksonville pass game pretty much across the board?
Yeah, I'm pretty excited for Jacksonville this year. They didn't take this step forward we expected last year. In fact, they kind of took a little bit of a step back. But if you look at a lot of the sharper people that do film analysis and whatnot, like Trevor Lawrence ran really bad last year. He could have had a lot more passing touchdowns than he did. Didn't really get a lot of help from Zay Jones and from even Calvin Ridley last year. And now they bring in Brian Thomas Jr., the rookie, who we have high expectations for. Christian Kirk, got injured at the end of last season, but was really a reliable, strong target. They still have Evan Ingram as a strong target. And I think Gabe Davis is a capable field stretcher with high TD upside. So I'm in on this whole offense where you're just banking on, a young quarterback with a really high pedigree, figuring it out to an extent and getting some help with a rookie wide receiver like Brian Thomas Jr. And then just some natural regression, baked in.
Yeah. I mentioned how thirsty people are on Underdog for rookies and wide receivers. Despite that, we are still 10 spots ahead of ADP on Brian Thomas Jr. But yeah, I mean, his touchdown rate in college was obviously completely ridiculous, and an Underdog that certainly helps.
Also, Brian Thomas Jr. was sort of the clear fourth prospect at wide receiver in this draft. He gets that type of draft capital, goes to a really good landing spot, and his ADP is behind McConkey and Keon Coleman. I just don't get it. And I think some of where we differ from the ranks on rookies is we're kind of we're trying not to overdo landing spot, even though I think it's a good landing spot. But you'll see us even with Rome Odunze a little bit more optimistic because of the talent and the draft capital, as opposed to purely evaluating the landing spot.
Yeah, exactly. Early season opportunity isn't something that the public is going to overweight. We're trying to be more focused on late season opportunity. All right. Let's go to the Titans, Herzig. This is just a flippening. I mean, the market prefers Calvin Ridley massively. The market is taking Calvin Ridley 65th overall and DeAndre Hopkins 82nd overall. We have that flip. DeAndre Hopkins 66 and Calvin Ridley 85. I will admit that this one actually raised my eyebrows a little bit, but man, if you look at it, Calvin Ridley has not been good for a pretty long time at this point. Herzig, what do you think about handling Titans wide receivers here, Hopkins and Calvin Ridley?
I mean, I think this is just like age bros dominating and just thinking, oh, Calvin's younger, even though he's actually not that much younger. Like, Calvin's got to be better, but like Calvin wasn't good last year. Like, if you actually look at the metrics and stuff, like he wasn't actually a good wide receiver last year. And then DeAndre Hopkins, like even despite his age, he still was getting open, still has pretty solid kind of routes for what you saw from his second level stats. But overall, I don't know, like it's a confusing one for me. I don't have any Calvin Ridley. I do find myself drafting DeAndre Hopkins mainly because he's also at the end of the wide receiver tier for me, where after DeAndre Hopkins, like I don't really want to get into Christian Watson. I'm really not too interested in some of these other, I guess near him are the Lad McConkey and the Keon Coleman and such, who are actually probably a little before him now. But that's where I really start liking to go into the running backs or maybe grabbing some QBs. So that's where I'll end up with Hopkins because I don't dislike it. And it's kind of a good spot to get that last wide receiver before the tier drop.
Yeah, I mean, to Herzig's point, Hopkins is only, I think, 2 years older, roughly, than Calvin Ridley at this point. So, yeah, DeAndre Hopkins falls a ton in a ton of drafts. People just don't want to click DeAndre Hopkins whatsoever, and I think that's a pretty big position for us there. Like Herzig said, end of the tier. Dallas. So really the biggest outlier we have on Dallas is just on Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott 72nd in our rankings. ADP is 88. I love being high on Dak and Dallas pass game this year when your running backs are Rico Dowdle and Zeke Elliott, and your defense and your offensive line may not be able to run block as well as they used to. You could have a really, really high throw rate, Leone. I assume that is at least part of why we are 16 spots higher than market on Dak Prescott.
Yeah, we saw Dallas go to a much higher pass rate over expectation after their bye week last year. They had success with it, with Tony Pollard being pretty inefficient and Dak and CD absolutely breaking out. It's one of the biggest things we got wrong last year, honestly, was the Dallas play calling. I was paranoid with the loss of Kellen Moore and going to Schottenheimer. They were going to be a little bit more run heavy and slower pace. They were not at all. They kind of stuck to who they were. Everything this offseason kind of seems to signal the same thing, in terms of how they address the running back position. Just bringing Zeke back, and they have Rico Dowdle. They don't have much there. So I think the pass game is going to be in the arm of Dak Prescott. He led the NFL in pass touchdowns last year. He was very efficient. He's going to have high pass volume. I really don't get this one, especially relative to kind of the next group of players. We're going to talk about the Houston Texans, but we're pretty behind ADP on CJ Stroud. And when you compare Dak to Stroud, like you need Stroud to be just absurd inefficiency to beat Dak, and like there's just got to be a huge gap for the ADP differential of about 3 full rounds on those guys to make sense. I'm assuming once again, Herzig, like the stacking maybe plays a role with the Houston receivers, just more of them coming off the board earlier.
I think it heavily plays a role, and that's exactly what we're seeing here. For Dallas, you have the CeeDee Lamb drafter, and that's the only person with a cowboy through when Dak gets drafted, because Ferguson is getting drafted right after, I think, or right at where Dak is. Compare that to Houston. You've got potentially 3 different owners that are all trying to fight the Diggs, the Nico, the Tank, that are all trying to fight over maybe even the mix-in of who gets the Stroud. So without a doubt, that's what drags Stroud so early up in drafts. And Lamb, I mean, since Lamb is the only owner that's really looking for Dak, it just allows him to kind of fall and get that extra value.
Yeah. The Dak, I don't want to call it backdoor because Dak still goes 88th overall, but Brandon Cooks, Dowdle, Tolbert are all like easy backdoor stacks on Dak, even if you don't have CD. I think that's okay. Herzig, do you think it's okay to take Dak stuff without CD? It'll be somewhat unique, I think.
I think so. And especially if you're getting Ferguson, I'm almost always okay with if you're pairing a QB and a tight end, especially on Underdog, just because Underdog is so important for a QB scoring. And so if your tight end can get one of those QBs, I think you can still, without a doubt, kind of have a strong weekly upside.
All right. Leone, you mentioned the Texans wide receivers. Steph Diggs, we are 5 spots behind ADP. Tank Dell, we are 8 spots ahead of ADP. I don't know what's going on with Steph Diggs, man. Each of the last 2 years, it has been a mess down the stretch for Steph Diggs in Buffalo. Texans wanted him. This was not, all reports were, this was not a move that the Bills were trying to dump Steph Diggs. The Texans actually went out of their way to acquire a second round pick and go get Steph Diggs. And so I thought that means something. But man, I love Tank Dell. I mean, I think Tank Dell is just absolutely awesome. I love being higher on him. It's just hard to be higher on Nico, Tank, and Diggs because the market loves all 3 of those guys. So how are we handling Texans wide receivers?
Yeah, we're actually expecting and projecting Houston to throw more than they did last year and give Stroud a bit more given how awesome he was. So that's factored in. But, it's funny because a lot of times we take heat for not adjusting for age enough, people feel like. And I think that's what we're doing here. Diggs had a really horrendous second half of the season. Meanwhile, Nico finishes second in yards per route run, Dell 14th. It really just, and Dell, we were projecting in DFS like somewhat meaningfully higher than Nico by the end of that before he got hurt. Obviously, Nico has a larger sample size and absolutely crushed down the stretch, but we'll keep an eye on Dell's health. But if the return from injury is smooth, I don't see any reason why, especially in half PPR, he should be going behind Stefon Diggs. I think the upside is a lot larger. I do think Diggs landed in maybe the perfect spot for him where if it's condensed, even though there's like 3 or 4 guys, if it's just those 3 or 4 guys, he can still get 20% target share. He can thrive in the slot. He doesn't have to get open downfield as much, but it does also limit some of his bigger play upside that we've seen the past few years with Buffalo. And Dell, we know, absolutely does have that big play upside.
Yeah, I mean, it is very expensive and you have to reach to do it, but you can get the Stroud doubles off. You can get Nico, Dell, Stroud. That is definitely possible. I've had made it happen, but you need to reach a little bit to do it. So, yeah. Let's go to, this one, Leone. Commanders, we are at 195 overall on Ben Sinnott. ADP is 153 and also 14 spots behind on Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin, 70th in our rankings, ADP 56. Now, I've been taking a ton of Jayden Daniels. I don't always feel that compelled to go out of my way to stack it, right? Because a single him and Dotson I have, or him and Sinnott I even have on some reaches, him and Luke McCaffrey, etc. But I don't necessarily feel like I need to go out of my way to get McLaurin. And if Sinnott goes too high, I don't worry about it too much either. So that's kind of how Jayden Daniels, I think, fits with his legs. But adding these guys on their own, Leone, 40 spots behind on Sinnott, 14 spots behind on McLaurin. What do you think there?
Yeah, I just think, it's a difficult projection when you're taking a quarterback who people give Lamar Jackson type of upside. Well, in terms of play calling, Lamar wasn't really great for his pass catchers. He had the MVP year where he went absolutely nuts and bonkers year 2. And if that happens, you're going to hit. The upside is there for the Washington guys, but I think the market might be overreacting rating the probabilities that happens. We do have Washington above average in pace, but even with that, only have them at like 31.4 pass attempts per game, which is, bottom 5-ish in the league. And we don't know exactly what Jayden Daniels' efficiency is going to be year one. I feel a little more uncomfortable with, honestly, the McLaurin fade than the Sinnott fade. I know everyone's into Sinnott, but I think there's, again, overreacting to what the systemic things that happened the year prior. Like, everyone was afraid of these rookie tight ends last year, and then they smashed, and now everybody wants to take them. Well, we had a really unique rookie tight end class. Like, Laporta, Kincaid went to nut spots. They had first round draft capital, and I think the market was maybe undervaluing them, and we could kind of see where maybe they'd be outliers. Sinnott goes the end of round 2 in a really weak tight end class. A month before the draft, he was like unranked by some dynasty people, and now we've all talked ourselves into him as a mid-tier tight end. Like, if he lasts to like round 14, and I know I'm taking 3 tight ends late, I'll take him early to get the upside and take some boring guys after. But in a vacuum, I think this is chasing the upside a little bit too much.
Yeah, totally agree there on the Sinnott take for sure. Yeah, I mean, he did get a draft capital. Ben Sinnott did, going 53 overall. And I think that's why people are so excited. But to Leonie's point, the rookie tight end sample, if you expand it beyond Sam Laporta, Don Kincaid, guessers get really ugly. All right.
He's going where he is because of what Sam Laporta did last year.
Sure. Nick Chubb, I'll just take this one. You guys can go back and listen to the Market Monday from, I believe it was May 20th. I talked a bunch about Nick Chubb. This is the second time Nick Chubb has completely shattered his left knee. The first time was 2015 at Georgia, and then this time last season with the Browns. I'm rooting for Nick Chubb. Seems like a good dude. Seems like a really hard working dude. We're currently at 133 overall on Chubb. ADP is 108. I get the idea. You get Nick Chubb for late season, but the way Nick Chubb scores points, he needs volume, he needs efficiency, and both of those to me are in question coming off of such another serious injury to his left knee. He's not going to give you much in the pass game. And on top of that, I think Jerome Ford and Dante Foreman can both play. So easy fade. And I think we're all in agreement there on Nick Chubb. Herzig, let's go to James Conner. We are at 114 overall. ADP is 93. I don't even want to talk about James Conner because this guy has shoved it down my throat so many times in DFS when I don't think that he can do it. And he just keeps doing it. And they keep giving him huge workloads for whatever reason. Now, though, they had Trey Benson. How do you feel about being below market again on James Conner here, Herzig?
Yeah, I think the difference in previous years, we were expecting someone like, I don't know, DeMarcado or, Benjamin, like someone to surpass James Conner when there wasn't actually much talent, capital, contract behind him. This is the first year that, yes, he's age 29, but now you also have like Trey Benson, who by all accounts, first top 2 RB in this draft. A lot of player, prospects, people who are doing the prospects really like him. I think that by the end of the season, Trey Benson will be the either clear number 1 or at least really cutting into Connor's workload. And this is a game that we care about, the fantasy playoffs. We care about what you're doing for me come week 15, 16, 17. And that's where Connor is going to be least valuable. I think this just has absolute disaster potential written all over it. And we don't have the same level of upside or likeliness of hitting that upside unless really Trey Benson gets hurt.
Right. And, although James Conner hasn't missed that many games, he's missed a lot, but not, seasons and stuff like that lately. He's always on the injury report. I mean, always seemingly on the injury report. Market is taking James. I'm surprised by this, actually. Market is taking James Conner 8 spots ahead of Trey Benson. We have Trey Benson 2 spots ahead of James Conner in our rankings. Let's go to George Pickens, Herzig. This is another one I talked about on Market Monday and actually got a lot of pushback on it. People are like, well, I thought one of the more compelling arguments, and just to be clear, we're at 63 overall and George Pickens' ADP is 46. I think the biggest pushback people gave was that we're writing off Arthur Smith too soon. Where, if you go back and you look at Arthur Smith, when he had AJ Brown was, I think, the number 4 fantasy wide receiver in points per game. And so we're going too far on the Arthur Smith hate, and therefore George Pickens, we're too low on him. Herzig, what do you think about being 17 spots below ADP at 63 overall on George Pickens?
Yeah, I think this is one when someone shows you who they are, trust them. I mean, like Arthur Smith in the past, like, what have you done for me lately? We saw how bad it was with Drake London. And when you think about like the other players, it was Matt Collins, Kadarius Hodge, Scotty Miller, Van Jefferson, obviously Jonnu Smith. Guess who's at Pittsburgh right now? They brought back Van Jefferson. They brought Van Jefferson over from Atlanta. They brought Scotty Miller over from Atlanta. Like, those guys are back in town. We then also still have the Roman Wilson rookie, Quez Watkins, and Calvin Austin. You've got 3 tight ends. Like, I'm scared shitless of this entire passing game. And even if you think like, you know what, yeah, but you have the AJ Brown scenario from a couple years back. You have George Pickens as a different level talent. Look at the other wide receivers that are being drafted around George Pickens. They don't have anywhere near the level of risk of that Arthur Smith offense, and that's where I'm just not even considering him. Now, personally, I love the Pittsburgh run game, and that's where I think Arthur Smith really thrives. I think that's going to do wonders for both Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren. So when I want pieces of the Pittsburgh offense, I'm going for it on the ground, not touching anyone from a pass catcher in Pittsburgh.
I'm embarrassed to admit this, but I believe Najee Harris is my most drafted player so far. Pretty humiliating, but yeah, I think it is. Leon, you want to say anything about Pittsburgh or ready to move on?
Ready to move on. I think Herzig covered it.
Okay, let's go to Derrick Henry. Now, everyone's excited about Derrick Henry in Baltimore. Even my son is like, Dad, Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson together, Derrick Henry's going to score 30 touchdowns. I was like, yeah, you might be right. That'd be bad for me though. Derrick Henry, we have 46 overall. ADP is 31. Now, anyone who has followed us for a long time knows that historically we've been low on Derrick Henry for multiples of reasons, mainly because when his team gets behind, he is in big trouble. He's not a pass catcher in any sense. He has broken the bounds many times in terms of long runs and efficiency. But we get the scenery change now to playing with Lamar, Leone, and we are way low here on Derrick Henry. Talk to the people about that.
Yeah, we actually have Derrick Henry projected for more running back rush touchdowns than any other running back besides Christian McCaffrey. So, we're trying to bake this in as much as we can. But if you look at how this team operates with Lamar taking some carries, splitting some work, you look at Henry's age and the fact that Tyjae Spears outsnapped him last year, it's tough for us to project him for half the team's carries, right? Like Gus Edwards only had 2 individual weeks where he had greater than 50% of the team's carries. So it's somewhat similar to the Saquon Barkley thing where like he's got to be really efficient to kill us. Could I see it happening? Yes, but his efficiency has dropped off the last few years after being at like 5 yards per carry. Like clockwork, he's been like 4.2-ish the last few years. And like I said, even Tennessee dialed back his snaps. And he's never been a guy to catch a lot of balls. And in Baltimore, the running backs don't catch a lot of balls. So it's going to take him being absolutely amazing to really burn us here in a big way. And, if he does, kind of just got to tip your cap.
Yeah. I'm totally fine with this fade also here, and we are way behind, like I said, 15 spots behind on Derrick Henry. Let's go to Sam Laporta here, Herzig. Sam Laporta, we have 41st overall. ADP is 29. I mean, people are really reaching to get Sam Laporta on their teams in best ball right now. I like Sam Laporta. I don't think I've gotten him once because, my God, he just goes so high. Herzig, what do you think about this Laporta fade?
Yeah, I think his ADP is pretty crazy, particularly when we have tight ends that aren't that much different going 3 rounds later. And what's even more absurd, and what I think we're going to start seeing, is we're going to start seeing his ADP actually go the other way and still move up the drafts because of the week 17 correlation. You've got CMC going number 1 overall. You have Ayuk and Debo going at the end of the second, early third. You're going to have people who want to pair the San Francisco and Detroit, and so they're going to bring Laporta up to that early third round, end of the second, if even crazy, just to get that CMC, to get the Ayuk, to get the Debo kind of stacks. So this is going to be one of those ones where, for the most part, I'm just going to have to accept that I'm out on Laporta this year, but I really don't feel that bad about it. You still have a lot of target competition in Detroit. You have Amon-Ra. Maybe Jameson Williams takes that next step up. You still have such a run-heavy game with Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery that I think, this is just a hard one to really crush us with a second round, third round ADP.
Yeah, totally agree. And if you want to have like that 49ers Lions game, I like David Montgomery. He's going 73rd overall. I like Jameson Williams. He's going 94th overall. Like, you can still later find your way into this game. All right, Leone. The Bills, your Bills.
It's not the right one to throw to me.
selected Keon Coleman at 83rd overall. I'm sorry, Keon Coleman at the top of the second round. We have him 83rd overall in our ranking. ADP is 71. I think we're really fair here. This just looks to me like a case of people going way too far on rookie wide receiver. But yeah, go ahead, Leone, on Keon Coleman.
Yeah, I think initially the market had like Lad a full round of Keon Coleman, and we were actually like in line or a little bit ahead of Keon Coleman, which I think was right because I actually think he had better draft capital than Lad and a better landing spot. So like I'm maybe a little bit more bullish than our rank, but still probably can't quite get to ADP. He's another prospect that's like not the cleanest of prospects. There's definitely some upside here. I do think he's gonna get all the opportunity in the world if he's any good, just because what they've done with the wide receiver room, they don't have much choice. I will reach on him again. Like if I feel like I'm pretty safe with 3 or 4 receivers early, or if I've taken Josh Allen, I'm fine taking Keon Coleman at ADP. I'm not going to go ahead of ADP on him. I'll take him at ADP, but in most normal builds, I don't end up with him on my team just because I think the projection's a little bit too much. And I think, some of this stuff with the rookie receivers will shake itself out over the offseason. We'll be able to get in on some more of these guys.
I mean, he was like the 9th or 10th wide receiver off the board or something like that. If I recall correctly, maybe 8th. I mean, the NFL said that they don't think Coleman is like some kind of superstar. And so I think people are propping it up too much based on landing spots. So I'm fine being 12 spots behind there. Let's go back to Arizona here, Leone. Trey McBride, we have 55th overall. ADP is 44. I love Trey McBride. I love Trey McBride in general. 44 is high for a team that added Marvin Harrison Jr. So yeah, go ahead, Leone, on being behind on Trey McBride.
Yeah, and realistically, it's not the addition of Marvin Harrison Jr. that has us off McBride. Like, if anything, like I kind of view that as a positive, where this offense is going to be more successful with a talent like Marvin Harrison, but there's still plenty of opportunity to go around. It just comes down to an extremely volume dependent tight end that you're thrusting really far up the board in half PPR scoring. And if you look at our ranks on some, other sites, we have McBride tight end 3 in PPR. We're ahead of ADP on him in the tight end premium leagues. It's just he's a really big catch compiler, not a ton of efficiency. Maybe that changes, and that's where we could be wrong. But at this point in time, somewhat similar to the Laporta thing, just think that there's other tight ends that have similar projected outcomes that you can get for a good bit cheaper.
Certainly, yeah. And the tight end landscape is something that we'll talk more about, but certainly in the early going, Laporta and McBride are getting very pushed up boards. Second to last one I want to hit here is Kyren Williams. Herzig, we had the report this week. Kyren hurt his foot again. This is his 3rd foot injury in the last 2 years. 3rd known foot injury in the last 2 years. We have him 30th overall. His ADP is 22. I just want to note that we were behind on Kyren Williams even before this foot issue. But yeah, Herzig, I feel okay about this, but maybe there's some Blake Corum freaks out there. I've seen some stuff like Blake Corum's better than Kyren Williams, and he's gonna pass him no matter what. I don't know if I can go that far, but yeah, what do you think about being behind on Kyren?
Yeah, I mean, if you just evaluate from a college standpoint, like I think it's very plausible to say that Blake Corum was a better talent kind of coming in than we see at Kyren. Now you can't account for like Kyren was actually really good when he's been on the field, but yeah, he can't stay healthy, and there's no question like drafting Blake Corum and the comments from the coaches saying this is basically the same skill set as Kyren, it concerns you. And when this is a team that we've seen, time and time again, wants to use one running back, it's not going to go for, it's rare that they go for kind of a split workload. You got to make like hey, black and white, who's going to get it? And in that scenario, like I always put in some odds for where I think like the likelihood of some of these players starting in week 17. And I think that there's like probably a 30% chance that Kyren won't even be that starter come week 17. And so that's a lot of risk this early on. Now, when things work out well for him, he could have been a first rounder. Like wouldn't be surprising if he finishes this year as RB3, RB4, if he plays all the games, and has that workload, but that workload is in jeopardy.
Certainly. All right. Last one, Leone, is Jayden Reed. We're at 65 overall. ADP is 58. This Packers wide receiver stuff is hard. They have 5 guys, and me and Silva talked about this too. They have 4 guys who can really play, and if you count Bo Melton, 5. Leone, we are going to end up behind on a lot of these guys because it's hard to give them projectable volume, but the ceiling is there on all of them. How do you think about handling Packers wide receivers and Jayden Reed.
Yeah, it's difficult. In a vacuum, you really want to be in on a prospect like Reed. We were ahead on him in dynasty ranks last year and our redraft ranks. And he goes out, puts up 1.95 yards per out run as a rookie, which is a really strong season. And you're generally in on a sophomore wide receiver like that. It does feel like the exception here, though, with Green Bay having a lot of young talent. I mean, the market's totally forgotten about Romeo Doubs, who just crushed in the playoffs. We didn't see much out of Jayden Reed in the playoffs. I know someone who had him in the FFPC playoff challenge. I know he just kind of disappeared, and that's just because they can mix guys in and out. And I think the reliability you're going to get from him is tough when you can make bets on Christian Watson. 2.5 rounds later, Romeo Doubs is going 60 picks later. Dontavian Wicks is going 80 picks later. It just, he's not someone I'm full fading, but at this point, at this cost, I'm more likely to invest in the other Green Bay wide receivers and just take what I view as somewhat similar upside at a lot less risk.
Yeah, for sure. And reports so far on Christian Watson's hamstring have been good, but we will certainly see on that. All right. We hit on a lot of guys here today. Hopefully that gave you guys a sense of where our heads are at on why we're in or out on guys relative to market. These were indeed our biggest stances. For more player takes, be sure you stay tuned to this feed as we will continue to do Market Monday every Monday. And be sure you subscribe to our YouTube. It is indeed free, plenty of content there that does not hit our audio feed. For Leone, for Herzig, for producer Ryan, for producer Luke, I am Adam. Good luck, everybody.